I think a lot will depend on how the sort of centrist Macron bloc voters will behave. I think many of them in the end might realize that voting for the left, is better for the country than voting for RN or staying at home. But it's still open, and it will depend very much on what they decide. And what I'm a bit concerned with is that the government, the current government, has tried to sort of demonize the left in recent weeks, recent days, recent months. Although, Macron would never have been elected without the left. Without the left vote in favor of Macron against Le Pen in 2022 to 2017, he will not be president. And he never really tried to do something together with the people who in the end made him president. He wanted to govern on his own. We had this sort of three-block system in France with the sort of centrist pro-business bloc, which had objectively a very socially favored electorate. They get the highest score in Neuilly-sur-Seine, Paris 16e arrondissement, the very fancy place on the country. And, they thought they could remain in power by just, catering for these groups, just on the basis of the division of the lower income voters between, those living in small cities and rural areas voting RN and those voting in large conurbation voting for the left. But, you cannot govern the country like this, with in the end such a narrow electoral base for very long. So I think this is a big lesson from this election, which I think also holds for other countries, is that the idea of putting the center right and center left together and the sort of winners of globalization together and govern the country against the left, against the right, is something that cannot work for very long, and so we have to return to a clearer political conflict between something like a union of the right, including center, union of the left, including center left.
You were one of the voices presenting the economic program for the Nouveau Front Populaire, and of course an ambitious and very generous economic program, more than 100 billion euros. And we saw the market move the past couple of weeks, being worried about what that could mean for public finances. So while you propose to increase minimum salaries, increase salaries for public civil service, put some price caps on essential food, etc., can France really afford this kind of political program given the state of the public finances and the deficit?
Okay, so the important point behind the program of the left was to try to mobilize more public resources through higher taxes on very wealthy individuals, multinationals, in order to invest more in education, research, health, public infrastructure, public transportation. And not only France can afford that, but I think this is the only way to have a prosperous economy in the long run. So the markets and the people who are going to pay more tax in the short run might not see that, but it's always been like that. In the short run, people with higher income, higher wealth always believe that it's better to keep taxes low for them. But in the long run, what has made us in France and in Western Europe and in Nordic Europe very competitive economies, is this investment in education, health. We are today, the GDP per hour of work in France is over 60 euros per hour, one of the highest in the world. 1 century ago, it was less than 3 euro. How did we get from a productivity of 3 to a productivity of 16? And how are we going to get to a productivity of 100 in the 21st century? This is, education, investment in research. If you don't do it with public resources, then, this is going to happen with private resources. Like, look at the health sector. The US now is spending close to 20% of their GDP on health with a lot of private money. Is it more efficient? No. If you look at public health indicators, that's a complete disaster. So the question, can we afford it? Yeah, I think we can afford to be more efficient. And in the area of health and education, public investment is simply working better, and if people don't want to look at the numbers, what can I do?